Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining in from today. Welcome to another live session at the Reactor. We're streaming live from Reactor Berlin, though I'm based in London, but we are global, so we can stream from anywhere. Before we get into the session, please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We're all here to learn, so please be respectful, please be kind, please ask a lot of good questions. The chat will be open throughout, and we do encourage you all to participate. Today, we have a very exciting session with Alexander and Mona. They're going to be talking all about building your company Copilot with AzureML and OpenAI. So without further ado, I'm now going to bring them up and they will lead the session. Hi, Mona. Hi, Alexander.
Hi, Rav.
Hello. So over to you now. I'm going to be at the back. So just in case if you need me, just shout and all the best.
Thank you.
Thanks. Hey, everyone. Alex and I are so glad to join you and walk you through a quick presentation on how you can build your own company's Copilot with AzureML and Azure OpenAI. I'll start off with giving an intro about Azure OpenAI and through the lens of using our Azure OpenAI Studio, which has had a lot of interesting additions since Microsoft built at the end of May this year. And then Alex will take over and show you some more advanced techniques using AzureML. So Azure OpenAI Playground is essentially an experimentation, a prompt experimentation, and a model fine-tuning workflow playground. Absolutely no coding is required. It's a low-code, no-code environment, and you can just get started using this URL that you're seeing here, which is oai.azure.com/portal, and it basically takes you to this playground experience here, which I'll be covering later on. To get an access to the portal, I'd recommend you first getting access to the Azure OpenAI service itself. It is a limited access service as of today. So you'll have to apply for that using a very simple form. And then within a couple of days, and sometimes even within a day, you're able to get access, create a resource on Azure OpenAI, and then jump into this portal. Yeah, so just Rav's going to share these links later on so you can get started. So this is the Azure AI Studio, the Azure OpenAI Studio that we launched at Build with the full range of capabilities that you can see here. So you're not only able to try the latest and the greatest models that Azure OpenAI is supporting worldwide, but you're also able to try out different examples or use enterprise-related controls such as content filters, which enable you to create RAI-related modifications specific to your company. There's also a few interesting ones that we won't have time to go into, but experiences like DALL-E, which is our image generation model. And with that, let's get right into it. A recommendation, I will not be doing a demo today, but if you have this open and if you already have access to the studio, you can follow along with me and make this an interactive presentation. So this is a view of the chat playground. Chat playground is where the action is today. And we see over 70% of our users are regularly using chat playground and developing company copilots and experiences that range anywhere from customer service to manufacturing to even like any industry that you can think of. So the easiest thing that you have to do to get onboarded to a chat playground are to understand these concepts that you're seeing. So there are three main panes in the chat playground. The first one is an assistant setup. So this is where you essentially prompt ChatGPT models, chat completions model, to specify how they should act. So these are things like you can use from a template, which can be anything from be an Xbox customer recommendations agent or be a tax chatbot that answers like tax related questions. Basically, this section tells the model as an AI assistant what you're supposed to do, right? this section is the way that you actually interact with the model. So this is the conversation or the chat session panel where you type in a user query or a question to the model, and based on the assistant setup that you specified, the model returns answers to you. So this is the closest to what the people you're developing, the users you're developing the app for, will see this experience. So it's an experience for you to try out. Then this last one is the configurations panel, which essentially has two parts. One is this deployment. So this is where you select a deployment before a model deployment before you can use it. So one thing that you need to do even before you get to the chat playground is do something called a model deployment, which is covered here. Essentially, what you do is that you you select a model that you want to deploy on your resource. And in this case, for chat playground, you do, like, let's say a GPT 3.5 Turbo or a GPT 4, which are the supported chat completions model. And then basically you tell the chat playground here that this is the model I want to use, right? So in this case, this is from the build, and this is what I named the deployment, so that it uniquely identifies that with these specifications in a model, this is what I want the chat playground to use. Then there are some advanced settings like session settings, which tells the model, hey model, last 10 messages should be included, and sort of like context grounding for the model, right? And then the next one is parameters. So this is again things that tell the model on how to tweak the language so that it is specific to a certain use case. So for example, something called temperature ranges from 0 to 1. When it's a temperature of 0, it means the answers are very specific and not as creative, right? So think of it as good for tasks like classification, where you give the model, let's say, 500 different words or messages, and you say that categorize them into, let's say, 5 different categories. Like it could be orders. Let's say if it's an e-commerce scenario, it could be, let's say, orders, complaints, returns, or miscellaneous, right? So very interesting to play around with. There are some other parameters as well, but I encourage you to like go ahead and try it. Most often, I recommend people to only change the temperature as well as the maximum token count. The maximum token count is essentially what controls how long you want the answers to be, right? So with that, let's move on to trying out an exact example. So out here, we've added a scenario of, we are telling the model to behave for like a customer support agent. And we're saying that your primary goal is to help users with the issues that they're experiencing with their Xbox devices. And you're friendly and concise. This again tells the model to change the tonality as well as how long the answers should be, as well as providing factual answers to queries. So this is again a play on constraining hallucinations, and there are several techniques. I do a session on this separately, but basically think of the system message as a way to tell the model, yes, you have the knowledge of the world, but this is how you're going to constrain your answers, right? Yeah, and then, finally, look at the last sentence carefully. When asked a question not related to Xbox, you may respond with, I can only help with Xbox-related questions you may have. Now, this is important, and it's a very simple technique to reduce hallucination for your enterprise use case. Let's say, you wouldn't want Xbox to, if you're developing an Xbox customer service agent, you wouldn't want it to answer, let's say, about PS5 or anything random that it may have picked up and tried to hallucinate. GPT-4 has been really good with reducing hallucination, but I still encourage you to like play around with the system message and see how the answers change. The below section is on adding few shot examples. So when I say few shots, it's basically to show the model what kind of responses do you want. Again, this is like a way to tell the model that this is how you can mimic the responses and make sure that the rules that I lay out match the system message, right? So out here, there's added an example, how much is a PF5? And then, the assistant response that I apologize, I don't have any information. And you can customize all of this, right? You can customize this and make sure that, your audience, your target audience sees what is appropriate for your company's use case. Now, let's look at some of the chat sessions, and you can do this live, and it is very, very interesting to go through this as you're developing your GPT-enabled chat copilots. So if you can try asking it a few questions to see how it's behaving. So, if you ask it when was the Series X released, it gives you the right kind of information. Xbox S console, it gives you the instructions. So it's like a very, very easy way. Think of taking the customer service time that it usually takes, when a human responds to something very, very lightweight and easy. And how is it able to pull this information? Well, Xbox has its user manuals on the internet, and the model, somewhere has been trained on this, which is why it is knowledgeable. So even without you, having to do anything, you're able to see all of this, like right from the get-go. Here's some additional functionality of the chat playground that will be very helpful for you when you develop your company's Copilot. The first one is the sample code. So if you click on a button, which is right at the top of the chat playground, you can basically see a view of the code that is customized to all the settings that you made in the playground today. And we are making it available in Python and in curl. You can basically copy the endpoint and your key, and have this ready in your code environment and ready to go, right? So this is the view code button, and you're also able to toggle it to see the raw JSON and to be able to reference, and copy and paste, and see how does this change the way you're developing your Copilot. We had a very interesting couple of launches at Build this year, one of which was deploy to a web app. So what I showed you in the last screen was an experience where you have the user message experience, you make your setting, and you basically iterate on it to see what are the right prompts that are working for you, the right settings, right? But what if you want to see how the consumer experience will look like, how your end user experience will look like? We had this feature asked by many of our users over and over again that, hey, we have that wildly popular ChatGPT app that, that end customers are able to use within my company. How do I make my Copilot available very easily? Share it with my colleagues, share it with, let's say my CEO, and see how, this app can work without them, going into this playground and, making the settings just like the very simple experience, right? So you can deploy to a web app or a sample app, and it's very simple. You do this configuration here. This is the ingress to deploying as a web app. And basically what it does is all the settings, all of the system messages, everything that you've done in the builder experience comes into this app. You create this web app, select your subscription, your pricing tier, etc. And then within minutes, this app is deployed. And what you see from here is basically like an app related experience. So before I show you the app experience itself, let me also give you a little bit of hint around the add your data preview, which is the second capability that we launched. So add your data is essentially how do you use your company's data to ground the responses, right? So in the previous example, I showed you an example of you're an Xbox customer agent. Xbox's user manuals are on the internet. The model already knows about it. But what if, you are, you have your own company, your data is not out there, it's not publicly available. Let's say you are developing a chatbot for, your HR, and it'll be used to answer, employees' questions on the policies, on, let's say, what do they get with their insurance, etc. Now, that information is not available publicly, but you still want the magic of these GPT models and the way that they're conversational and great at responding, but also use retrieval augmentation to bring in this data to make the chat Copilot sound intelligent, right? So this is something that is currently in preview. You're able to add your data source, which is stored securely in your Azure subscription, and then ask questions about your data. Here is a short summary of how this works, and We have a GitHub repo where you can like go and try out and the search term or build your own. But essentially, what happens is we have a user's question, and then there's an intent classifier within the Azure OpenAI service, which detects the domain of the user's question. And then, along with the user identity and the querying on the knowledge basis, it formulates a specific prompt that is a knowledge grounded, a data grounded prompt, which goes into the ChatGPT models and returns a response to the user. So Alex will cover it later, but this is essentially a RAG pattern. It's a retrieval augmentation generation pattern where you make a way to add knowledge to on top of the Chat GPT model so that it's useful for your own Copilot use case. Yeah. Now this is basically our the deploy to web app experience that I was telling you about. And out here, you will see that we have added our own data. It remembers all of the settings and the user message and the system prompt, everything that we did in the builder experience, and very beautifully it shows the enterprise experience. So you see a little bit of the glimpse of the Bing experience, right, which is the enterprise, which is the builder experience that like we have millions of customers consuming all over the world. But it also works a lot like the Chat GPT experience that you see end users using. So in this case, this is what we are doing. Dave is a regional sales manager, and they want to predict sales price and understand trends, right? And Emma is the marketing lead, and she's responsible for content creation for new Surface laptops, and she wants to basically have a better understanding of the features of the Surface laptop and be able to empathize when she's creating marketing collateral. So let's see, how these two people use this to get ahead of their work, right? So Dave asked, what's the capabilities of Surface Go? And you can see that, it basically excerpts the exact notation along with the citation from the documentation. And you can see this increases the believability of the content that's been generated. And this is working because it's grounded in the data that was ingested in the last step of add your data. So you can see the thought process. It's an unstructured classification, and this is basically how the system prompt and the query has been generated. So as a developer, you can see that what's going on in the background, and you should be able to like tweak this within the builder experience in the playground, and then have your business users like Dave and Emma from sales and marketing to try this out. Now look at the supporting content. Within the chat experience, you're also able to see, let's say there are more than one document that references the same answer, right? And you can see all of this within this, and it's as simple as just clicking and going and seeing the citations, the thought process. It's very, very simple for your business users. Now let's see something on the structured data. Now here we are trying to create a table listing of the screen resolutions. This is a structured table pulled from the same data source, but a very brief summarization of all the screen resolutions that are mentioned for the specific models. It can be very useful for both Emma and Dave to create the kind of technical content or the technical understanding that they need for their own product line. And again, you can see what kind of query is being generated using the RAG pattern that we showed you before, as well as the prompt. Again, for your business users, it's a very simple interface for them to click in and out of and to really see what's going on in the background. Now, let's try out another one. And this one is for Emma, who's developing marketing emails. So she's trying to prepare a marketing email for Surface devices, and she tells the model, like, focus on better display and compare insights. And again, like within a few seconds, she's getting a summary of the screen resolution. And this is a full customer email that is basically ready to send. And it's grounded in the right data. It's fully customized to the use case. And it brings the power of retrieval augmented Copilot with the company use case for a specific task, such as writing a customer email that you can send out to your customers. This one is, again, it shows you, give me last week's details on sales. So Emma is trying to access this, but Emma is again from marketing and is not allowed to use the resource. So this is a way to constrain usage for certain for certain users who are not, let's say, specific to, what kind of information that they should be privy to. So Emma being from marketing, Dave said that, hey, I want this data only to be available within the sales people who work in the sales domain, right? Which is why it's showing you this kind of error, right? And you're able to set this up again, figure out what kind of access controls make most sense for you, and then get ahead with it. Yeah, and here is the more, there are several other examples, but you can try it out, in your own time, and and go from there. So, Alex, do you want to take over?
Sure. Thank you very much, Mona. This was a great presentation on Azure OpenAI services. And I'm allowed to continue this. We have seen this kind of services. We are part of Azure Cognitive Services, and it was a great introduction. And also, you have seen a lot of samples, how to start, how to train, and so on. That is about the pre-built service, also from Azure AI Decision. We have also seen a lot of samples. If you are familiar with cognitive services earlier, we have also Vision, also Azure AI Vision, Azure AI Speech, and also Azure Language. So now we want to build our Azure OpenAI services and just to build, train, and consume also with Azure machine learning. How does it work exactly? If we get one user question, the LLM workflow, it looks like, okay, we have a query. The query is running on my data, and we're using Azure Cognitive Search on these. This is one sample that Mona already said. I want to use my own data. I want to provide my own data to the LLMs to not just to use the data that is already perhaps in the cloud, but perhaps it could be on my SharePoint Online, it could be on my Azure storage, it could be whatever, PDFs, images, and so on. So Azure Cognitive Search would query this kind of data, also add the results to my prompt, query the model on an LLM, and provide me some results. And that is the cool idea about its retrieval augmented generation. And you see there's one example from a talk from Zev with another, Daniel Schneider, and so on. I will refer to this talk and provide a reference later. You will see a screenshot from this Microsoft Build talk that is a sample from here. So we have some data provided, and the user said something like, I'm planning a trip and I will be sleeping back here. Is it warmy or not? And the information is somewhere in the data we provided earlier. And Azure Cognitive Search is searching for the data, provided also information to the LM. You see, also we are searching for the intent. This is a product question. Okay, thank you very much. Description is now for the sleeping bag. What kind of item do they have? What kind of order? And there's something, this is information is somewhere in the data that is completely unseen for the end user. And then you can show here on your that is what the user sees in this and then the idea is what kind of information we have in the backend, the stored in the backend, what kind of information we are seeing then from the system. Then they can go on and just provide here the information to the end user and interact with exact information. I take you a little bit deeper, and we can also use LLMs to find this kind of intent. So this is a really cool idea. If you have your chat history, perhaps a customer information, you can do your LLM app. Not only just for ChatGPT, like asking questions and get your results. Ask the questions and get the results. I think you realize that wouldn't really work on custom data, on data that is not really or already been seen by Microsoft services, because there's no training for this data. That's completely new. And then we have some services we can provide, and so just for LLM ChatGPT, we can just there's a connections to, of course, different services and so on. We can just provide the information. Okay, what is the information we have get from the user? Okay, what is it about? Was it the customer intent, or is it this question about the product, and so on? So ChatGPT can just provide us the information. Okay, I think this is about the product, and then we get our product ID back. We are going to search for product info, and then we provide this information for cognitive search. So we are already not using the ChatGPT for just generation for some speech, and to providing the information like text-based information to the user in the chat. So we are going to the templates, provide these to the cognitive search, and then starting to provide, of course, some reply to our users based also on the context we have seen. And also we can use here some templates, and also provide here the Azure OpenAI services, and also get some information from ChatGPT. If you want to start on this, I'm taking you to Azure ML Workspace. So first of all, if we are running this kind of services, we have also to create Azure machine learning workspace studio. So you need a subscription. You are now in your resource group. My resource group is called here Azure Machine Learning. Then you create here one resource that is called Azure Machine Learning Workspace. You can see it here. If you just hit and provide this kind of studio, so you just start the studio, it goes there, and when we are ready to start and ready to go. So in this Azure Machine Learning Workspace Studio, you see a lot of information, something new in the preview, so something like model catalog and prompt floors are in the preview. Since Microsoft built in this May, we have seen that Microsoft announced a lot of great stuff here, like ChatGPT 4 interaction or integration in Azure Machine Learning Studio, and so on. But back to the slides. If you are going to Azure Machine Workspace, you have a lot of things that you provide. And what we want to show now is this prompt flow. That is really in the preview. That is a new feature that Microsoft provides since the Microsoft built in this year. So this is brand new. And what we can do here, we can create a standard flow, a chat flow, or evaluation flow. And when we create this kind of flows, we can help the system to run from our inputs, to just say, okay, we want to make a hello prompts, for example. Then we want to somehow integrate or interact with this kind of flow, and then we want to get an output. You see directly what is the main idea of these flows, because if we are running our queries against or to the Azure Machine Learning services, and also on OpenAI services. On the LLMs, we get an answer, we get a query, we get an answer back, and so on. So that is just a direction you see here. You can provide more LLMs, no more prompts, more Python code, and so on. You can just use this kind of interface. So just provide your prompts here. You can also do this with Visual Studio Code completely on premise if you like. For the first time, if you want to run, you can see here that the runtime is missing. So I created just a hello hello world prompt, and this is that is not really the big prompt, but this is only you have to understand how the flows are working. You get your input, so like text, the value is hello world. Your output is just an echo from my prompt output, and then the hello prompt you can see here that provides some kind of message, like a hello world. It's a simple flow this time, and then I can just hit here and create a runtime first. So on Azure Machine Learning, we have to provide some computer instances, of course. If there are no instances, you can create a new one or just provide an existing. If you want to create a new one, you can choose whatever you want, CPU or GPU size, and also machine type of CPU, GPU, and also machine size from, for example, whatever 20 cores, NVIDIA, Tesla from the GPU. And if you want the CPU, that's also machines you can choose and to run them on your own, and also provide the information to the machine learning workspace there. So I hit to create. It depends on what kind of resource you want to run. Perhaps it runs in 5 minutes, it's created. Perhaps it takes 10 minutes, but after 15 minutes, I think we are done. We are ready to go. So creating is already done, and the resource is running, and then you can just hit your runtime and provide the information here you want to get your runtime. That is my machine learning computer instance. However, I just name it Alex Wachter. I don't know why, but it's okay. It's running. I created this one, and then you see if you hit here, please run, your prompt will, or your flow will execute it. They takes an input, they completed your prompt, they created an echo in Python, and then you get your output. That is a really cool idea, just to get started on these and just to provide the information. So when we are running these, I think that's really cool to see, okay, it's completed, but how great was my interaction, or also how fast was it? So you see directly in your output the duration, then you see your output that's write a simple hello world. So it's a echo program, nothing in between. So you see also your code in Python, and you can just just experience on this time on what kind of information would you run, would you expect to do, and so on. So the input, and so from one step to another, you see the input from the the input from first time as an output for the second, and so on. You're running this time. Of course, you can add more tasks. For example, just create LLMs, prompts, Python, and so on. And then they will be shown here. So that is a new prompt, that is a new Python code, that is a new LLM, and so on. You can also do more tools on this. So for example, Azure Translation, Vector Index Lookup, or whatever you want. That is really cool, because there's a lot of integration about this kind in this Azure Machine Learning Studio, with all kind of interfaces and all kind of services that Microsoft provided, from a custom AI. So from as I earlier mentioned, from language, Azure AI language, from Azure AI content search, whatever. The whole sentences or examples that I want to mention now that have been copied from here. That's a talk that I really that this was really great. As a build and maintain your computer company Copilot at AzureML and GPT-4 from Greg, Seth, and Daniel, and they provided insights directly from a Microsoft build. How would I do one kind of demo chatbot, the Copilot, from my inputs directly from the intent user prompt templates? So I provide some templates and my input. So I would provide here here the information. Okay, customer input, what kind of information is there? For example, from some general information and so on. So you can build a lot of prompts. It's a lot of objects you want to just provide to the flow, and then running this. And also at the end, you can choose whatever you want to evaluate. For example, you want to run to evaluation only on the last from the context. So you can do whatever you want from input to the output and see, is it running correctly? Is it running great? Or is it somehow, are there any bugs, for example? So if you are going to hit customer input, that we are now here in this kind of section, then you can see there's a lot of code we can provide from Visual Studio Code, for example, on premise, or we can just provide it inside from Azure Machine Learning Studio. So that's a really great idea. You don't need anything on your machine. You can just provide it with Microsoft services, and then you can see, okay, this is a Python code that you defined to split something on your lines and just provide the information on there. How would I know if my context is running great or not? You can also do a lot of evaluation, also run a bulk evaluation. If it's completed or not, you can see what kind of information the system provides to you, what was replied. For example, I don't really want to see a lot of "I'm sorry to hear that something doesn't work," or I provide the information as a prompt. Okay, was it okay for you to run this one? And you provide, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't understand you." So this one is you can just check what kind of replies the system provides to the end user, and just learn how to figure them out, how to run the systems better, I think. So if I'm going back to the slides, just to show you a little bit from the prompt and also from the created prompts. So now you can see the inputs. If you want to run a LM, you can see directly we added a new default Azure OpenAI. This is a connection to OpenAI. We see you can chat embedding or completion API. You can use whatever model you like. Perhaps this is a text in DaVinci. So maximum of token. You provide, of course, the temperature that Mona is talking before. And then you can also do a lot of fine tuning, I think, on this. And then your prompt will be directly run against this kind of connection. So you have seen I have provided here one kind of LM. If I want, if I don't need to run, I can just delete this one and say, okay, I want to mention there's a one new perhaps deployment model, and I want to use perhaps more tokens and other temperature. That is the information that Mona talked to you earlier. So this is really cool. You can do this from your Azure OpenAI Studio, and also directly Microsoft integrated these in these flows. So that is not really the same interface, but you can just open and use this from the API to run your information here. You can also see you can provide more prompts. Then I go to the prompts. Of course, I will say, okay, what kind of prompts do you need? Generate me perhaps some variants, generate some kind of information. I think that is a really cool idea to start on this Azure Machine Learning Studio, to just walk through the prompts, just create one prompt to see how exactly does it work, to clone it if you like. If you don't need it anymore, just hit here, delete, and then you are going to run this in a new way. Of course, also some Python code. If you like something to be generated, you can see also, you can, of course, rename it, but it's not the same thing that I wanted to show you. But then if you are going to here, you see here there's a code inside. You can provide more Python codes if you need, if you want to test these and so on. You can just go to just to create here your in your design studio. If you are familiar with Azure Machine Learning Studio, that is the same experience from your user as the earlier Azure ML Designer. For example, if I'm going to hit this one, and if you want to just see whatever, some new information, you can see it. This remembers me this kind of information. You'd hit your data set, for example, you run your Python code, you'd split your data for testing and validating and so on. So this is here, and then you run your training on your model and so on. So from the user experience, that remains me the designer that we have already seen, I think, for many years in Azure Machine Learning Studio. If you are going to prompt floor, then you can also hit there and provide information here on some kind of tools that you want to use here. For example, if you are interested on running this kind of computing, you can create also, of course, several computer instances, all as instances. If it's running, it costs you. So it's better if you're not using it to stop it or run it in a cluster. For example, if you are going to hit here, you can just create a cluster, as I've already provided this information to you. In West Europe, it can be a CPU, for example. So these 3 V2 is, so for example, one that is really familiar. If you're familiar on this, you will see that is the one that you created the whole time. Perhaps DC12 on the CPU page, and select all. If you see here, you get standard NC6 with Tesla, and if you need more instances, you need more resources, of course. You can run the bigger one, for example, this one, and so on. So you just create this kind of information. I want to go to, yes, leave this one. Sorry for this. If you are going to AzureML, for example, you can choose here to create your instances on the fly, start them, and then you're doing your clusters on the fly, creating them. Start this. If you are ready if you're ready with your work, you can just stop them directly in your notebook. So you're doing, for example, also if you want to go to Azure Machine Learning and create your, for example, I'm going to hit this Python code, and then you see you can running on this kind of machine, but then you can also use serverless or provide your information. So Azure Machine Learning in your notebooks, that is what Mona earlier mentioned. You can also run this time on your local machine to use also virtual machine on Azure with data scientists tools enabled. And I'm also can run this kind of notebooks, just creating this one as a job. Just build my information to train, just import all the information, and then after I can just hit and also provide this if you want. Or if you want to test, you can go on your own and just create this one. Then you trained your data, and then you have a model. Of course, that is a creation of the model that can be used here for your endpoints, for your compute, and so on. But if you are going to hit here and just to want to use LLMs, because you don't really go for Azure Machine Learning or Automate Machine Learning or notebooks and create your own LLMs, it would be too expensive, I think. But I wanted to show you the whole information inside this kind of services. So you can, of course, train your own data, but also can use the LLMs Microsoft provided here. That will be not really expensive on this. deploy also, if you like, to create this kind of endpoints with your token or keyboard-based authentications. And if you are creating this kind of endpoint, that is what you see here. And at the endpoints, you can use these endpoints, as Mona earlier mentioned. You can deploy your Azure OpenAI service as a web app. That is simpler like this. That is a kind of API. You can use it to just create a workflow from external to just to query your information here, and then you are done on this, and you get your information. You use external services just to query, just to get your LLMs running, prompts, you run your flow, and then you get your information back and use it on your own for services, whatever you want. So the idea of my talk, I think, would also be just to mention as a key takeaways, just try it for free, because you can just go and request a test to Azure OpenAI services on AKS OpenAI Access. That is the first step you have to run to be enabled for this. You have to provide here one kind of subscription. So that is not what the user will be accepted to create OpenAI services later. It will be enabled on subscriptions. So if you are going to your Azure OpenAI service, for example, from my point, I'm running in one kind of subscription, and this subscription is enabled for Azure OpenAI. So you have to provide also the subscription ID to run this kind of workflow. That cannot be run with Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail, and so on. So you have to provide your company email address and also a company subscription ID. If you already have if you Microsoft or Azure OpenAI accept your request, the second point, you can also go and submit a request to Azure OpenAI GPT-4 public preview list, and you see the first question that they ask for onboarding. Did you run the first one for onboarding Azure OpenAI services? That is the first step. If you say yes, you have to provide a subscription, and then perhaps you are lucky to get your access to GPT-4 services. So that was my part of scope. Are there any questions for both of us, to Mona and also from my person?
Yes, thanks for the session. So I'm going to go from the top. We have a couple of questions from the audience. So the first question is, don't you need an API pack for the chat? If so, do you have a copy of the API required to run it on a private network? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, we can also see the question. The idea behind this is, if we are running this on the private endpoints also, if you are running here on your endpoints, you can create your endpoints, and then you see here when you are running, when you're getting your models and you are running your endpoints, you create on the on the private network on premise, on a private network from Azure services. If you are running an Azure infrastructure, for example, and you are there, and this is all in a private network, you need, of course, endpoints to get this API. You have it to be connected to this kind of API. So you need of course APIs. That is the first question. Do you need these? I think so. So and you can provide, of course, if you are running on Azure AI. The idea is behind you have to somehow provide the information how to go from your private network. Is it completely on premise or not? That was the question back, of course. But when you can provide the information, as Mona earlier said, if you're going to hit the Azure OpenAI services and you provide this as a web app, there's also possibility to provide this information also for your private network. But if you are completely private and we cannot see, or Microsoft cannot see your data, I don't think that would work, however, for this kind of case.
Okay, so the next question we have is, can you tell more about examples and how many can we use?
Yeah, I can take that. There isn't a limit on how many examples you can provide. I think on the playground right now, I think potentially the limit is between is up to 15. But when you're trying to like, and I'm guessing you're trying to ask about few short examples. When you're trying to like set examples, usually we've seen is users have found anywhere between like 5 to 7 to be able to sufficiently ground the response. What is useful is you can try to experiment with the order of the examples to see if you can even like limit using a smaller number of examples and optimize the performance of the chat model.
Okay, the next question from Peter is, hello, my company uses OpenAI in Azure GPT 3.5. We requested access to GPT-4 several times using the same form and never got any reply. Could you please help us with that?
Yeah, I can help answer that. It's my team that handles GPT-4 requests. So first of all, apologies. This is since it's currently a high in demand model. It's currently only available by request. I'm sure you know your request is being handled by our support team, and we are trying to prioritize and get you access as soon as possible. So I'd request you to keep your eyes peeled. Could be any day.
The next question we have is from Mim. Regarding the example questions, can these be set by us, or does ChatGPT create them based on the profile of Dave/Emma by default?
Alex, do you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. Great question. You have seen there's have been some examples that queries PDF files, but also queries a SQL database. So you have to provide the information, the profile of Dave and Emma. That was a sample that you realize what kind of information Dave and also Emma wants to hear. That was a profile from them. What kind of information do they or running in the company and so on. And then they are querying data from some kind of information stored in the company and so on. And you do not have to create profiles for Dave and also for Emma. It was only from these examples. ChatGPT, if you provide the information from your company, like a SQL or like a PDFs, there is a Azure Cognitive Search that points the create queries against these kind of information and provides you the answers. Then the profiles here was only for demo purpose. So that's why you have seen there's a profile like Dave, there's a profile like Emma. In the end, there's a web app that you can run and you can query with your data and also with your prompts. But then you get information from your data, what is from Azure Cognitive Search be created and also get to your back.
Perfect. The next question is, So, not sure I fully understand the use case. Are these compute instances needed 24/7 for the prompt flow routine?
No, that is just the running from the prompts here that we wanted them. We wanted to provide a prompt, and it should be then. I think I understand the question now. I'm sorry for this. If I'm going to run this, so you see there's a prompt I have created here, and they don't let me here create this time and run it one more time. That's one left. I'm sorry for this. This is this one, I think. So now I can run it. It's running on this runtime machine and get me the answer back on this flow. So the idea behind this is I provide some input. I'm running the flows, whatever I want to mention. If I manage this kind of information, so perhaps I want to edit new one, then I need to run it one more time. If I'm going to deploy this, you have seen I have to create an endpoint. And this endpoint is if I want to go to the endpoints, if I want to create an endpoint, that's mentioned me. I have to select a model that I have already created for this. So if you are running these kinds of prompt, you will get somehow I think a model, and then you point from the endpoint a model, and then you're going to hit this one. So I think that is kind of knowledge that I have. Perhaps it's not all true, but if you want to add there, I'm happy.
Yeah, I can add. So in terms of like if this will be needed 24/7, it will be once you deploy an app, right? And based on the usage of the app and the number of times it calls the APIs that are part of the prompt flow, the prompt chain is how these will be called into action.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So I suppose we'll take one more question as we're running out of time. Is cognitive search easily linkable to GitHub? Is there a kind of bridge to do some inference on a code base?
I think there is, and maybe this is something we can share offline as well. And you can see examples. There are several GitHub repos which demonstrate the answer to the question you're asking for around links to GitHub, and there is definitely bridging support if you want to try out inferencing.
I think we've got 2 more minutes. If it's okay, we'll take 2 more questions.
Sure.
The next one is, will we be able to fine tune the models? And I saw the charges were based on our system for certain CPU/GPU, but do you also have the costing based on a cost of running node?
Yeah. You're able to fine tune the models, but not all of them. I encourage you to go through and maybe Rav, this is something I share with you later on. The models we support for fine tune, and we currently, as far as I know from the last update, don't have costing based on the cost of the running node. But this is something we can definitely take back to the product team and see what we can do if this is useful.
Okay, then the last question is, how do we set up if we want to set up different recourses for different clients from their documents?
Alex, do you want to take this one, the last one?
That's a great question. Sure. If we want to use different, I think, the resources, or was it resources? I think that it should be resources. I think.
Mhm.
Yeah. From different clients, then you have to provide, I think, different models, as Mona earlier said, to run against the prompts on the data. If you have different clients, they want to hear, for example, something from, if you can just differ from one kind of data to another. If you have one database and or one kind of application, you get insight to this, then your LLMs are based on, okay, what kind of prompts do your client want? So you can also use one LLM to provide the data, because LLMs prompts are about or through the Azure Cognitive Search to your data, and then the client said, okay, I want to show me something about marketing, and the other say, show me example in sales, and the other say about whatever another topic, then your LLM handles the queries.
Okay, perfect. Thank you both for an amazing session. The resources for today's session can be found once the video is uploaded on YouTube. We'll put all the resources under the description. If there's any other questions, anything you have, please feel free to email us. And thank you, Mona, and thank you, Alexander, for this amazing session. Did you have anything else you wanted to say to the audience?
No, happy to be here. Thank you very much, Mona. Thank you, Ralph. See you next time. It was a pleasure.
Yes, absolutely. See you next time. Thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining, and have a great evening.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye.